Hey guys, this is Anon, and I have another STB1 video for you today. It's been a little bit since I've done one on it, probably since the tank first came out, so it seemed about time again, especially because this tank has kind of turned into my second favorite tier 10 medium. I really enjoy the Leopard 1, probably as a primary, because of the mobility and the gun handling. And the STB, it kind of feels like a second Leopard, where it has very similar mobility, similar gun depression. It trades off a bit in its gun handling. It's not quite as good as the Leo, but it gains some really nice turret armor that lets you work the ridge lines and not have to be quite so afraid of being spotted like the Leopard does. So we're on the New Vineyards, which is a beautiful map for this tank, platooned with howitzer. You can see a little bit of arguing and salt here at the beginning because our heavies are being very stubborn and going to town, which is an area I really just don't like fighting from, and we were trying to get them to come out, but you know, sometimes this just happens and you have to work with it. So we're moved up into these bushes, trying to get spots as anything comes up into the ruins, and in the center area this is a really powerful spot that lets you have a lot of versatility, and especially in a tank with some decent turret armor and some good gun depression like the STB has, it's just a map that's going to let this tank sing. So I get spotted, and they're starting to get some TDs while our teammates to the right have pushed a little bit too hard and gotten themselves surrounded. So I'm backing up a little bit, trying to use the curvature of these hills so you can really utilize that nice turret. And we knew they were going to become unspotted anyway, so you just needed to be careful about it. So unfortunately, because our heavies didn't go the direction we wanted to, we kind of have to back up and reset here a little bit because we don't have support where we were hoping for them to be. So again, I'm going to just use these ridges and try and sneak any shots in we can, so that the dangerous E100 driver there gives us a few shots and we're able to whittle him down a little bit, which is really good. Anytime you see a good player and you can start to beat on him a little bit early in the game, that's going to be hopefully pay dividends later on. So just taking shots and being very cautious. When you have a team that's spread out this much and not exactly doing what you want to do, then you really need to conserve hit points because you have to assume there's going to be a little bit of a late game battle. So we're just picking up these spots as we go, and luckily howitzer and I are holding kind of the center of the map here. We're keeping them all the red kind of to one direction, which is very powerful, so they can't work around to your flank. And that's why anytime I'm seeing a tank on this left side to us, I'm trying to work on him and pushing back a little bit, because we want to keep kind of the front of the battle to our front. So it's very important to keep from having to fight from multiple directions and getting in kind of a crossfire situation, especially since we're down 2 tanks. But we're hoping to equalize here a little bit because this 183 has gotten himself pretty far out of position, so that's why I'm focus firing on him as much as I can, trying to get rid of this dangerous tank, and luckily that HE shield can kind of fish him off. But again, unfortunately our team has dropped into some low ground there, so it's something we're going to have to be careful about. And there's reasons why I'm starting to rotate here again, because now that we kind of beat them down to our left, they're starting to push to the right, and you can just see how amazing this tank is on ridges. It's not an impenetrable turret. If they can hit me with some nice heat rounds, it's going to do a lot of damage because it'll allow you to get some pens, but you can still see with the coupled with the gun depression, we can stay under the guns, keep the right part of our tank covered, and really do some nice damage. So the E100 has shown up again, and unfortunately we're having to work down in a little bit of a valley, but that's where the gun depression really sings too, because you can work up on the ridges, and I never have more than a turret exposed, and that's where it's going to let us really use this tank to the best of its abilities and start to whittle down. You just hope that the red team starts to make mistakes and press in, and that's when you can kind of make them pay for these mistakes. So finally getting rid of the E100, and we're starting to work the numbers back in our favor, so it lets me kind of push back around to work on this E50, because he is pretty isolated from the rest of the team. I always like to take on a tank that's away from the others just to try and end that. And I'm also being careful just to make sure that nothing kind of sneak shots into my side. I have to trade a little bit to do it, but it's kind of a numbers game at this point, and that's why we're okay with doing just a little bit of trading and continuing to push on. I know whereabouts that last tank was, so I'm going to start to work that direction and just kind of see what we can work into. Still being a little bit cautious because you just never want to take anything for granted, but luckily the Centurion is kind of positioned himself here. Actually, I think he went AFK for a bit, Yeah, it looks like he did finish in some AFK, but that center section of the battle is really what's important, and using the tank to its strengths, and that's really what I'm focused on kind of with this replay, is working those ridge lines. I didn't even have to really run around a whole lot to use that speed, but instead you can use the other tools that this tank has in its favor. I mean, every tank has certain things, advantages and disadvantages, and kind of every battle is about making sure you use them the right way. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to actually an older replay I forgot I had. I was just kind of glancing through videos trying to get caught up a little bit. So, and this one worked really, really well, so I decided to go ahead and hold on to it. So we're on Mirage, and I'm platooned with Sir Rams of Storm, and we're going to instantly go into this dune area, which again is all about making the attributes of this tank sing. It has really, really nice view range, so that's why I'm popping all the way up to the top. I don't do it very often, but occasionally I do in situations like this, just because we're trying to see where the mediums are going. If I'd spotted them to my left or along the rails, it would have instantly dropped back down, but since they were coming up to the right, it let me hang in a little bit longer to try and work a few shots in, and then start to push in and use these ridge lines to keep a hold down. Also on Mirage, when I see situations like this where pretty much all the red tanks are to the right, I really like to push pretty hard down through the valley and work around to their left side. It doesn't work all the time, and sometimes I stop if you run into anything, but it's one of those maps that gives you the most obvious paths for a full flank, which can be really, really fantastic, because very early in the game you can start to get them in a crossfire or pick off some of these straggling tanks like this. We've got now 2 tanks taking on 1 in this Patton, and it would let us get rid of a really dangerous gun pretty early in the game and start to put those numbers in our favor, especially since we've actually lost one here. Got a little greedy with the HE, but luckily it still got through. And again, I'm just being careful. I don't want him to hit me at this point. There's no reason to sacrifice hit points for no reason, but we're also able to keep a pretty good idea of where kind of all the red tanks are and where they're popping up. So I'm hoping to get a few shots on the Tortoise, but he's got a little bit of cover there. But because I can see everything's kind of to my right at this point, again, I can start to work that flank. Just a really powerful scene where that being able to watch your mini-map and kind of see where everything is, that I know I can push him and get the full circle going really early, because there's no tanks that's going to have line of sight on me and be able to do any damage at this point. So go ahead and get rid of a very, very dangerous gun, put us up by 1 at this point, and now that they've kind of sold themselves out into the dune, it again kind of lets this 140 and I start to push into what's the new flank. They go up by 1, and now I'm a little concerned because they do have a lot of health, but it just is kind of what it is. I want to push this 140 and hopefully scoot him back a little bit, so that my guys get a little bit of breathing room and can kind of start to corral and consolidate these tanks a little bit. But he's a good player, and you know, is doing a good job of dodging in here too. So just keeping an eye on it. With that IS-7 to the left, I don't want to rush out and over push the 140, because then you put yourself in a natural flanking position. The Jagdpanzer has gotten himself in a pretty dangerous spot with an auto track there, and there's not a whole lot you can do without selling out to get it. So I'm more concerned about, again, just kind of pushing whatever the flank is. I've got 2 tanks to our right and 1 a little bit separated here to the left, so that's why I'm hoping to work on him. But also, like I said, conserve hit points. We're only up by 1 tank, but we don't necessarily have the most hit point pool going on right now, especially after that 140 takes a big shot. So you can see here where there's that sacrifice off of the Leo, where it is going to troll you a little bit. You're always going to bounce a few shots. I feel like the IS-7 is actually kind of the anti-STB. I bounce more shots off the IS-7, and I know a lot of tanks do in general, but the IS-7, for whatever reason, seems to give the STB fits with its lower kind of penetration value. So I go ahead and pop Adrenaline, hoping to really work him down, because they've done a really, really good job of getting themselves back in this battle because of the low hit points. So it becomes even more important to kind of conserve switching to heat to try and get as many shots in as I can. Obviously a little salt from our own team, but you know, rushing in a situation like this just isn't smart, because you know, there's a lot of health on that Jagdpanzer, and an IS-7 is not the easiest heavy to circle ever, so you just need to be careful and make smart decisions when it kind of comes to these clutch times. So I'm really happy to see this Jagdpanzer pushing, or sorry, anyway, because it lets me kind of control how he's going to be able to roll over these hills. I can go for the track shot and start to work behind him, and it does at this point then let me really push the IS-7 really hard, even though I'm still fighting these bad RNG rolls. It just happens. But like I said, it lets me kind of control where it is. He takes the shot, which lets me really kind of roll around and do it. I take the track just to make sure it's a nice, safe kind of finish. And now I have him from behind. I'm not necessarily close enough, so he has a chance to brush me off, technically, so it's something you have to be careful of, and that's why I rush in really quickly, because if he'd have gotten his back, up against the dead tank, then it would have been much more difficult to finish. But, all of this battle really shows some of the major highlights of this tank. I was able to push the flank very quickly, use the great turret and gun depression along this side to come back from a difficult situation, and get the clutch and the ace. So it's just a beautiful tank. It really, there's a good reason why it's one of the favorites. It's a big Clan Wars tank, and these are all reasons that you can see why. So, as always, if you like this video, please subscribe on YouTube, and feel free to follow along on Twitch as well.